the nature and implications of consciousness in the universe through the fields of quantum physics and the paranormal. No reality left unchecked. No dogma left unchallenged. Q Science. And now your host for the Q Science Project, Jill Hanson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to an all-new episode of the Q Science Project. I am Jill Hanson, founder and host of The Q, which comes at you live right here on KGRA-radio.com every Friday night from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern or 7 to 9 p.m. along the Pacific Coast. At the end of every work week, I sit down with one or more of this pale blue dot's most progressive new scientists, philosophers, and or researchers in order to bring you a front row seat to the new science revolution. Tonight's show is an exciting one for me personally because we'll be talking about a topic I've long wanted to look more deeply into, but simply haven't yet found the time to dedicate to the venture. Lucky for me, I have these 2 hours with you each week where I get to explore new topics in bite-sized chunks. So tonight, I've invited unorthodox ufologist and senior Area 51 researcher Norio Hayakawa to hang out with me for a discussion about what we know and what we think we know about NASA's Project Bluebeam. After more than 45 years of researching the UFO phenomenon and others, Norio says that belief systems have been orchestrated by a, quote, manipulative force, end quote. Since 1947, the aim of which has been to ingrain altered realities and make mankind susceptible to a yet unknown but sinister and mysterious near-future scenario. One of the suspected protocols towards such a scenario is Project Bluebeam, which is an alleged secret NASA program in which advanced technologies, such as the use of airborne holographic projection devices and the manipulation of various frequency waves, are purported to be utilized to create deceptively realistic visual and audio simulations, of course, in order to convince the experiencer that he or she is witnessing a real event. According to some researchers, programs such as HAARP, H-A-A-R-P, and the Bluebeam Project could be utilized in the near future to engineer perception and generate panic so that frightened and deceived public would clamor for some type of global authority and unity to fend off such threats. Norio, thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Jill, for having me on your program tonight.
I'm very much looking forward to it. So, having read plenty of your endeavors and your biography, I know that we could spend 2 hours alone on your life, in even outside of the topics that we're going to be speaking about tonight. You are a multi-talented man. Let's go ahead and just talk about a few of those right off the bat, just to kind of give any of our listeners who may not be familiar with you, just kind of a taste of what you've been up to from the beginning in Japan.
Well, Jill, I have been involved in UFO research since 1961. That's a long time ago, and from 1961, I became active in many UFO research groups, both in Japan and in the United States, because I began to subscribe to newsletters such as APRO and NICAP, NICAP, organizations in the United States. And I was active in this kind of research, and really, I have so many things to say because I've been involved in so many UFO-related topics for all these years, and I have gotten to know many, many, many researchers around the world, and I have traveled all around the world looking for any exciting sightings or any experiences, and I have traveled to many locations of interest. But it was actually in 1964 that I really became interested in UFOs because of one incident that took place in New Mexico in April of 1964, namely the famous Lonnie Zamora patrol officer's case. outside of a small town called Socorro in New Mexico. And that incident became one of the most investigated and one of the most credible sightings that was investigated by the Air Force. Even Dr. J. Allen Hynek got involved in, and Hynek himself said that the 1964 New Mexico Socorro incident was definitely one of the most credible one. Of course, he didn't come to any conclusion of what Lottie Samora saw, but nevertheless, it was well investigated. And so that was the incident that really catapulted my interest in UFOs, and especially my support until that time, my support of extraterrestrial physical hypothesis of the origins of the UFO phenomenon. So I was a tremendous supporter of the ETH, namely extraterrestrial hypothesis. However, I have diverted myself from that ETH theory late in the 1970s when I started devouring books by Jack Ballet and John A. Keel, and also J. Allen Hynek. Now, these three individuals, in my mind, were so revolutionary in their thinking. They, all three of them, departed in the late 1970s from the extraterrestrial hypothesis of the origins of the UFO phenomenon, and I also became into that camp. In other words, I have ever since I have been a skeptical person on UFOs as physical extraterrestrial visitations by physical extraterrestrial spacecraft of any kind. And well, in today's ufology, the supporters of the so-called ETH, the so-called nuts and bolts, flying saucers, UFOs are physical objects. This kind of support seemed to be waning these days, and many people are now leaning towards the extra-dimensional origin of this strange phenomena. Now, researchers such as Bill Cooper or William Cooper, who I had known for several years in the 1990s, Bill Cooper was another person that departed from the belief in UFOs as physical extraterrestrial phenomenon, and he also became skeptical of, in fact, the whole ufology. And instead, he proposed that it's the human technology that will someday orchestrate some type of a fake extraterrestrial event to create some kind of panic around the world so that the world populace will believe in the great deception. Mm-hmm. And this is called the orchestration of extraterrestrial events or visitations. And, this idea that the humans, the government, the secret government, will be the one that will use people's beliefs in aliens and UFOs. They will utilize those kind of beliefs to actually stage a false dramatization of extraterrestrial events to create panic. And this idea is nothing new. This idea of Project Blue Beam is not a new idea. Serge Monast, who was one of Canadian investigative journalist who was said to have coined the term Project Blue Beam. He was not the first, actually. This idea has been discussed many years. And in fact, I can actually say that TV movies of the 1980s, such as the program called, a science fiction program called The V in 1983.
Yeah.
That kind of scenario was already discussed in such TV science fiction movies. Even Gene Roddenberry, Star Trek type, idea that there will be a worldwide apparition of flying saucers and that there will be some kind of a mind control event that will cause people to actually believe in the actual physical extraterrestrial visitations. This kind of a idea to stage by using technology is not an idea, and it's not an original idea of Serge Monast, who actually coined the term Project Blue Beam. But anyway, regardless, Jill, as you mentioned, in the 1990s, I became an activist in the investigation of Area 51 in Nevada. I became so fascinated by that facility in Nevada, and I spent years researching, and by 1995, I had produced a couple of videos, such as Secrets of Dreamland, in which I proposed, similarly to Bill Cooper, I proposed that the government can use certain technologies to simulate an extraterrestrial event by use of advanced technologies, and I'm talking about holographic projection devices, sound waves, you name it, all kinds of electromagnetic interference and mind control to actually culminate a long-awaited event planned by some kind of a globalist cabal to create a new world order. But as I said, this idea of a new world order conspiracy is not really new. I mean, since the late 1980s, people have been talking about this new world order, and Serge Monast skillfully used that kind of a conspiratorial thinking to present his alleged Project Blue Beam, which is a fascinating thing. Now, the only thing about the Project Blue Beam and Serge Monast is that it's very difficult to document any governmental information on this subject matter, and it's all actually based on the ideas presented by Serge Monast, and it's something that is partially doable, partially plausible, because we have plenty of technologies now to orchestrate even a small event, localized event, using various types of psychological operations techniques to stage any kind of an event. Events such as creating some kind of a conflict, local conflict, or creating even some kind of a UFO incident in a local level. So we have plenty of technologies, and there are so many gullible people around the world these days that will believe in anything that they see. So seeing is not the same thing as reality. It's but people's minds are controlled, and that's why you brought up very well the introduction, in which I actually base my thinking that since around 1947, there has been a slow but sure indoctrination among a segment of the population, indoctrination to the belief in extraterrestrial ET visitations, so that in the future, and I'm not saying it could happen tomorrow, I'm just saying in the future, it's very possible for any group of people or any organizations, whether it's governmental or not, any secret group could use those kind of technologies to stage anything. And that is the core of the Project Bluebeam scenario, to stage something using mind control and using technology. For what purpose? To create some kind of a belief system involving religious beliefs, social beliefs, scientific beliefs, and so on, utilizing the beliefs of the people to, enact some kind of a fake type of event. And this is not far out theory at all.
No, it's not. It's not at all. So let's kind of deconstruct this from the very bottom. Okay. So first of all, when we're talking about Project Bluebeam, it's under the label conspiracy theory. Okay. And, people who, think conspiracy theorists are kind of, off their rocker a little bit, they're not going to give this theory the time of day. However, let's break it down and talk about the likelihood of all of this. Now, as fascinating a topic as this is, there's remarkably little information out there about it. Of course, except for Serge Benass's book by the same name, Project Bluebeam, rather. Now, as far as I can tell, I've been doing this radio show for quite a few years, and even beyond that, I've done research on my own. As far as I can tell, the actual technology that it would take to follow through with this protocol is in existence and may or may not have actually been used already in the past. So my question to you, my first question is, do you consider this to be just simply a theory, or do you think that it is in fact so likely that it is a reality?
Well, let me tell you that our present state of technology is in itself is amazing compared to what we have had in the last 20 years. Now it's more developed. Let's look at the use of remotely controlled platforms. In other words, let's talk about UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicles, or UCAVs, unmanned aerial combat vehicles, which are being used right now. But these remotely controlled platforms that have been developed, it's not perfect yet, but it may take many more years before it really becomes almost, indistinguishable from, let's say, a flying saucer, flying, And so what I'm saying is that, yes, there are technologies right now, but the question is, do we have sufficient technologies to orchestrate a global incident witnessed by every person in the world at one time? I would say that we need to wait at least 10, 20 years in order realistically to orchestrate a global scale event. For example, the event that was talked by Serge Monast involved creating apparitions of flying saucers around the world at the same time, witnessed by millions and millions of people around the world. Now, in order to do that, you have to have amazing technology to create a tremendous screen in the atmosphere to project holographic images that can be seen by every person in the world. But is it impossible? I don't say it's impossible because technology is developing so quickly these days. That's why locally, on a local level, yes, many of the ideas of Serge Monast and the Project Blue Beam is possible. But to say that it's possible now to orchestrate a simultaneous global dramatization of an extraterrestrial event, I would say personally, we still have several years, or at least many more years to go before this technology becomes feasible. But the idea itself is not far-fetched, as I said. It's not far-fetched. And, in 1994, I made a couple of videos, such as Secrets of Dreamland, in which I proposed the same thing, that in the far future, there will be a secret government of a sort that will create a global order based on the fear of the people and the need for global unity if we present a common enemy. And those are the actual words of Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev. And Henry Kissinger in the late 1980s actually stated those kind of things. So, many people in ufology have those kind of concepts, but when it comes to reality, yes, I would say it will take a little longer, even though the Air Force has come up with the 2025 program. And the 2025 special program of the Air Force was published in the late 1990s. Right. And so if you look at the Air Force plan called 2025, Air Force 2025, you can see that the Air Force is planning to create airborne holographic projection devices and many other types of technologies that were discussed even by Serge Monast and William Cooper and so on, and including myself. So, as I said many times already, this kind of thing is not impossible. It's possible. The question is what is the level of the state of art in order to realize this kind of situation. The idea of the New World Order is really actually grew from the George Bush president in Iraq War. He actually coined the term New World Order, and the New World Order in 1990 was the term coined by George Bush, the senior. And he said that we have to have a New World Order, and that was a popular term, but it was a term that was used by Adolf Hitler before. So again, it was nothing new, but George Bush Senior used that terminology to give an excuse, such as the going into Iraq and the need for creating the New World Order. But it was misused by conspiracy people because the New World Order that was discussed by George Bush Senior was not the same New World Order that conspiracy theorists use. There are two types. The conspiracy theories people use the term New World Order just like the Hitler's New World Order, or actually an Orwellian type of a society. But will the Orwellian type of society be fulfilled? I think it's not impossible, depending on uh, the need for that, because the more earthquakes, the more wars, the more conflicts, the more natural disasters take place, there will definitely be a need for global unity or global governance.
Yeah.
And so, but it's very difficult to ascribe everything to conspiracy theory. But yet, this idea is very unique and important because right now, the world is in total chaos.
Yeah.
The world is in segments, and religiously speaking, even religiously speaking, is divided into religions, fundamentalist Christians, Islamic beliefs, Buddha, beliefs, Christian beliefs, Jewish messianic type of beliefs, so the world is disorganized and divided so much. This is the reason why Serge Monast, his idea about the Project Blue Beam became popular in the 1990s, and then it spread even around inside the UFO community by people like Bill Cooper, and even people like myself, I guess. And I'm trying to be realistic as much as possible. And I am a believer that in this world there are some strange things going on, no question about it. But I am not a supporter of aliens or existence of, I'm a supporter that aliens probably exist somewhere in this cosmos, but are they physical entities or paraphysical entities? I don't know. But what I can say is that, researching this whole UFO phenomenon since 1961, that's more than 50 years, I have yet to confidently state that we have ever been visited by physical extraterrestrial biological entities in physical extraterrestrial spacecraft, yet the UFO phenomenon seems to be real.
Right.
And this is supported by great researchers such as Dr. Jacques Vallée, John A. Keel, and J. Allen Hynek. So I definitely believe in the existence of the UFO phenomenon, but it's a separate question when it comes to existence of physical entities that have come here.
Okay, so maybe that's a good place for us to start. Maybe we should go back to Area 51, back to when Bob Lazar came out and he was talking about reverse engineering extraterrestrial crafts and that kind of a thing. So what would you make of Bob Lazar's claims if we're talking about, if this ETH is out the window, if we're talking about extra-dimensional origin of entities?
Well, first of all, Bob Lazar was a very, very intriguing person. Mm-hmm. And without Bob Lazar, there is no Area 51. That's the truth. Yeah. Without Bob Lazar and without George Knapp, who continues to support the claims of Bob Lazar. Without George Knapp and Bob Lazar and John Lear, there's no Area 51, because the Area 51 is a real facility, and it's a very important installation for the United States. We have spent billions and billions of tax dollars in very important research, military aviation and military weapons systems. And it's a very important, vital military research and test facility that is much needed in this dangerous world that we're living in. So I'm not against Area 51. I believe that it's a very important facility, but certain groups of people or part of the military or the government may have used Area 51 as some kind of a laughter curtain in which
Okay.
associated with beliefs in alien technologies. And so, in my position is that Area 51 is definitely an important facility, which is still growing every year. You can see the satellite photos anytime, and you can see the tremendous expansion of that area. In fact, the areas around the Area 51, namely the Nevada test site, has actually been renamed National Security Site, a Nevada National Security Site, and it's expanding. And there's a movement to expand the public lands south of Area 51 and north of Area 51 and east of Area 51 and west of Area 51, so that access to locations from where you can see the facility will be limited. So there is a movement, and there will be hearings even this year. This is a very important development, but it's all in the name of the importance of this facility. But Area 51 has been associated with alien technology, and unfortunately, no matter how Bob Lazar's story may sound sincere, and some people say he's credible, we have no evidence at all that there's any kind of alien presence, but we have considerable circumstantial evidence that this idea of Area 51 could be used and manipulated by those who promote the theories such as the Project Blue Beam in the future, because Area 51 has been associated with alien technology because of people like Bob Lazar and George Knapp. And George Knapp is benefiting from Bob Lazar's story, and he's the only person that continues to support the claims of Bob Lazar. Now, Bob Lazar is he's a scientist, and he's knowledgeable in weapon systems of many kinds, and he's still doing some contract work with defense contractors in Michigan through his organization called United Nuclear, and he's still doing some works indirectly with defense contractors. So he's not a dumb guy. He's knowledgeable, but it's my belief that he may have wittingly or unwittingly used this story about aliens, and it was actually one of Bob Lazar's inference that in 1975 there was a conflict between some U.S. special forces and alien entities in an unspecified underground base in the United States, and he was actually suggesting that incident may have taken place under Area 51 or Groom Lake. But other people have manipulated that story, and I'm mentioning a guy by the name of Phil Schneider, who has brilliantly concocted a story about the Dulce underground base through using Bob Lazar's insinuation that in 1975 there was a conflict in an underground base. Now, Schneider stole that story from Bob Lazar because by 1995 he had read hundreds and hundreds of articles about Area 51. He had read articles and books about Dulce Base. So by 1995, he became very knowledgeable about alleged Dulce Base in New Mexico. Now, what he did was he quoted or he hijacked Bob Lazar's story and changed everything, and he made himself a protagonist in Bob Lazar's insinuation that there was a conflict in an underground base in the United States. And he changed the location from Area 51 to Dulce, New Mexico. And he changed the year to 1979 instead of 1975. That was the year. 1975 is the year in which Bob Lazar insinuated that there was some kind of a battle between the U.S. force and alien entities in an underground base. But, that's the thing that we have to, consider when we're talking about aliens and underground bases. But this kind of things are very helpful in promoting the future scenarios. Whether you are a critic of this idea or not, both Area 51 and underground base theories are definitely part of this cultural, part of ufology.
Are you saying that automatically nullifies it as a potential truth?
It doesn't nullify anything. All we know is that there's no physical evidence for the Dulce underground base. There are many, many stories. There are many, many hucksters and promoters of disinformation that have been around since the 1980s, even now, who promote these stories and feed this kind of disinformation and ridiculous ideas to a gullible segment of the UFO community. And I'm not against the UFO community. It's just a community. But because of these stories that lack clear, credible, tangible physical evidence, most of the mainline community laugh at this kind of stories. This is the reason why this thing is not accepted by most of the scientists and astronomers and of the world, because if you take UFOs themselves, most scientists in the world are of the belief that it is impossible for a physical object or a physical entity to traverse this distance in this space with the speed of light without destroying themselves in the process.
Well, not only that, Norio.
Yes, without being, destroyed by tiny dust particles that are flying at tremendous speeds in the outer space. And so most scientists around the world, most credible scientists, are skeptical that the UFO phenomenon presents a conclusive evidence of extraterrestrial physical visitation. But yet, as I said, the phenomenon is real.
On a fundamental level, we're also dealing with, quote, legitimate, respected scientists who still question whether or not we're the only life in the universe.
That's right. This is the big...
If you haven't even gone that far in your head, then there's no way you can stretch your mind to consider that, A, they exist, and B, they're here.
This is a very important thing, Jill, that is a misconception among many believers in UFOs. And the misconception is that just because most scientists and astronomers are of the opinion that there have to be intelligent life in this universe, in this spacious universe, most people, most scientists and astronomers are of that opinion that alien entities could exist. But when it comes to UFOs, that's a different story, see? UFOs, unfortunately, we just don't have any concrete, tangible evidence for any physical visitations. But yet, as I mentioned in the beginning, I believe in the reality of the UFO phenomenon because even my mother, who was skeptical for many, many years, and who used to make fun of me when I was small for believing in flying saucers, that flying saucers came from outer space and are visiting us Earthlings. She used to make fun of me when I was growing up in the 1950s, 1950s, when I was going to grade school, elementary school in Japan. But she, a tremendous skeptic, had an amazing sighting in 1975 during broad daylight over a train station in Yokohama, Japan. And she witnessed a typical flying saucer hovering over a railroad station in the city of Yokohama. And it was during the broad daylight, and this flying saucer had a dome attached on top, and she pointed that object to her grandson, who was walking together, hand in hand. But when she turned around back, and that sun was gone, that flying saucer was absolutely gone, as if it dematerialized itself. So no question that I believe in my mother. Now, dematerialization and materialization is definitely one of the characteristics of this strange phenomenon. And, just like Dr. Jacques Vallée, I believe that this phenomenon appears, it's a paraphysical appearance on this physical dimension by a paraphysical sentient entity that is able to appear to a selected or pre-selected observers and to create the impression to the observer that it was an actual physical phenomenon. The only thing is that this phenomenon is unable to survive in our physical dimension. So this is the reason why most UFO sightings reports, or reports of sightings of UFOs, these UFOs do not last for more than a few seconds or few minutes at a time because they cannot survive. And this is the reason why I have come to the conclusion, just like, John A. Keel and others, J. Allen Hynek and so on, that this is a phenomenon caused by intelligent, sentient entities which are paraphysical in nature, but which have the capability to suddenly materialize at will and dematerialize. When the time comes, after a few seconds or a few minutes the most, they have to disappear or dematerialize because somehow they cannot last in our physical dimension. Yet, this phenomenon is able to affect our physical parameters, such as the radar. And this phenomenon is able to present some kind of residues, such as the residues of a burning grass where the object lands once in a while. So there is a capability of this phenomenon to affect our physical parameters, yet we never hear of an object that lasts more than a few minutes. You never hear of a flying saucer that stays around for days and days or years and years, because this is not a 100% physical phenomenon. And, it's very hard to distinguish this kind of phenomenon to the fake extraterrestrial Project Blue Beam type scenario.
Mm-hmm.
In a way. It's similar in a way, but the actual real UFO phenomenon is doing the same thing. They are materializing and dematerializing and presenting to the audience or to the observer a false impression. Uh, and so, yes,
Well,
this is
hold
very.
on, Norio. Now, are you saying then that you think, and of course you can't read anyone's minds other than your own, but are you saying that you believe that whatever's happening here, where this paraphysical phenomenon enters our reality and then almost as quickly as it came in, it exits again? Are you saying that you think that's an intentional thing, or is it potentially just a glitch?
Well, I don't think that's an intentional thing. It's just simply their incapability to remain in our physical dimension for more than a short period of time, and their incapability to be photographed with clarity.
Yeah.
This is another characteristic of this phenomenon, and it's not intentional. Intrinsically, these sentient entities, which are intelligent, are actually unable to mix with a physical dimension for one reason or other. And the majority of these cases point that these sentient entities have malevolent or mischievous type of intention. In other words, deception. And let me explain to you that there's a growing number of researchers that take the similar position that these entities may be the entities that ultimately could be part of a global deception in the far future in conjunction with the earthly technologies and earthly covert entities that seek to orchestrate and cause fear by technologically orchestrating this thing, but yet at the same time, these real entities could join together, or not join together, but on their own, create a false deception at the same time. And this kind of idea is being supported by a growing number of researchers. And let me explain to you that on January 11th of next year, there will be a nationwide showing of this unprecedented 2-hour documentary film called Alien Intrusion. This film is a unique film that will be shown throughout the theaters in the United States on January 11th, only one night. But in any city in the United States, whether you live, it'll be shown only one night. And this is unprecedented, but in this film, the theme of this film is that the UFO phenomenon is real. The alien abduction is real to the experiencer. This film will show that the UFOs can affect our physical parameters, but this film will also show that the original cast of this phenomena does not have good intentions. And it's a total deception, and I highly encourage everybody to go to the movie theater closest to you, because it'll be shown on January 11th, only one time. It's called Alien Intrusion.
And who is behind the film, Norio?
Well, behind the film is a researcher. Well, actually, there are many researchers that will be in this film, such as researchers by the name of Nick Redfern, Guy Malone, myself, and many others, like Jacques Vallée is being quoted many times in this film.
Okay.
But this is basically a film based on a book written by a researcher by the name of Gary Bates, who a few years ago wrote this book called Alien Intrusion, which is a very interesting book. It does not try to convert you to one type of belief, but it presents a very logical and the only alternative to this deceptive phenomenon. And in this film, I make a statement that we are not being visited by physical extraterrestrial entities in physical extraterrestrial spacecraft, but this phenomenon is an intrusion by unknown intelligent entities with malevolent intentions that will deceive us by posing as physical extraterrestrial entities. And this is the grand deception that may come in the future. So my position in this movie, in the documentary movie, is the position of the extra-dimensional origin of this phenomena.
Okay. Now, one last question before we have to go into a break, Norio. Now, we, at least here in the West, we are brought up with really, really black and white thinking. And we're taught to believe that if A is the truth, then B is not the truth. And I'm curious whether or not you would consider the possibility or the potential that these two phenomena are not mutually exclusive, meaning something can be interdimensional yet fully manifest on this physical plane. Do you think that we know so much about physics and the way that our universe works that we can really confidently say that that's not the case?
No, we're still, researching. The scientists are researching, and the state-of-the-art thinking in physics is changing every year. And, there are new ideas being proposed in physics, such as the, dimensionality and quantum physics and all these things, and including, even some kind of magical technology. When we talk about these things, time travel and wormholes and manipulation of time and space, that's not fine and dandy, but right now, at this stage, it's simply a world of imagination and magic, because this contemporary science, in other words, empirical science, right now has all these ideas, but realistically, it is very difficult to state that we have this kind of a new knowledge and proof of time travel and proof of, changing the time and, warp, space, time warp, and so on, and quantum physics. It's fine and dandy, but at this stage, it's a great imagination and speculation, unfortunately.
Sure, and that's definitely the truth. I guess what I've kind of evolved as far as a scientist. It makes me really, really nervous when they say, okay, we don't have the evidence for this. And the assumption then is that it is not true. And so then the avenue of thinking is like virtually dead-ended, right? And that avenue is no longer looked at as a potential, rather than saying, okay, we don't have the evidence right now for the proof, but it's just as, it's just as likely or has just as much potential, or, we have gaps in knowledge that could one day lead to evidence, either in support of or against this thing, whatever that thing is.
Well, unfortunately, when we're talking about intelligent life, most of the scientific community consider we're not talking about microbes on Mars or microbes here and there. We're talking about sentient, intelligent entities, and it's even Stephen Hawking believes that there has to be sentient entities in this wide universe. But Stephen Hawking also is of the idea that UFOs do not present the concrete evidence for such visitation. And that's the bottom line. No matter how much we want to believe in it, that's the bottom line, and we have to go by the bottom line. But this topic is so fascinating, no question about it. So I am a believer in the reality of the UFO phenomenon. Let's stress this idea. And I'm a believer that there has to be extraterrestrial civilizations or extraterrestrial beings somewhere out there, even though we don't have any proof yet.
I'm with you 100%. And everyone, we are halfway through tonight's show, and that means it's time to pause for a break, but please stay with me. We'll be circling back around in just a few minutes for another hour of discussion around Project Bluebeam with our guest, Norio Hayakawa. This is the Psience Project on KGRA-radio.com, your contact for the best in alternative paranormal, UFO, and new science talk radio on the planet. We'll see you right back here in just a minute. Please stay with us.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
Hi, it's AJ with Vibes Mind, Body, Spirit. The Vibes Tribe seeks to assist you in creating